Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this week's show. Boy, what a difference a week makes. Last week I was sitting on the porch talking to you on a beautiful, almost 80-degree day, and now it's in the 20s. It's chilly, but that's March in the Carolinas. Really, I think about most of the eastern half of the country got hit with this cold front. And we went from hot to cold in the blink of an eye with, gosh, I think on the coast they were having 70 some mile per hour winds. So it's a wonder we didn't have any tornadoes. I have a huge announcement this week. It's the culmination of 2 years minimum, probably longer than that, work. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I usually put out an article each week. For the past year and a half, 2 years, I've been focusing on bitter medicinal herbs. This really started the framework for my new book. It is the Encyclopedia of Bitter Medicinal Herbs. Now, if you've been reading my articles every week, you may think, okay, I know all about it. He's talked plenty about. This is so expanded. I mean, what I was doing with those articles a lot of times was just putting out almost like a skeleton, a framework. Within the book, I build on it. I cover 75 different medicinal herbs in over 500 pages. I mean, when I say this is the encyclopedia of bitter medicinal herbs, I am not kidding. Okay, yeah, there are more bitter herbs than just these 75, but I literally had to stop when I hit 500 pages. I mean, with the table of contents and everything, it's like 502, 504 pages. I'm not saying it's like, a lot over 500, but even at that size file, Amazon was really iffy about letting me self-publish through Amazon Kindle a 500-page book. And I actually had to make some compromises. I'm not getting as much revenue off of this one as I usually would, simply because the cost of printing all those pages is higher. But it is a handsome book. It is an incredible volume to put on your shelf. It was worth it to me, without a doubt, to put in, I don't even know, hundreds of hours of work into this book, probably thousands of hours of work. Uh, and take a little bit of a hit financially, not making as much as I usually do, to put this information out there. And it is a wonderful companion to the book I did earlier, last year, The Medicinal Trees of the American South. Um, those trees are also all, essentially, I can't think of any that are not bitter. They are medicinal bitter herbs. So with these two books on your shelf, if you need a bitter medicinal herb, you got it. Trust me. And there will probably be a volume 2 of the Encyclopedia of Medicinal Bitter Herbs at some point. But why I picked these 75 herbs, they are among the most useful, practical, and powerful medicinal herbs we know of. They are fantastic. That you're going to want to know these herbs. You're going to want to use these herbs. You can incorporate them into your diet. They comprise the Swedish bitters, the large Swedish bitters, or other, even cocktail bitters are based on these herbs. Bitter herbs, all of them, all bitter herbs stimulate the digestive system. By stimulating the digestive system, okay, they're going to help with everything from indigestion and gas and bloating and everything you think as far as digestion, stimulating appetite. Also help prevent and ease the blood sugar spikes that cause diabetes. You know, insulin-resistant diabetes. They have so many properties so far beyond that. I've tried to explain before how whenever we have an allergic reaction, it's our body reacting to what it perceives as some kind of germ, and it's putting up an immune response. Well, one of the biggest triggers for our allergies is food we eat. Even if you have no food allergies, I have no food allergies, but for a while I was getting an asthma flare up after eating. The reason was my digestive system was not breaking down the food quickly enough to identify specific proteins I was eating. And therefore, my body triggered an immune response. When I started taking bitters before a meal, the saliva gets going, the digestive juices, the acids build up, the bile stimulate everything, and the food is digested more quickly, more efficiently, and that inflammatory response stops happening. That's really pretty huge. I mean, inflammation is the cause of so many of our problems. It's that response that's triggering anything from nasal allergies or asthma to skin allergies, gluten intolerance, all kinds of stuff. Really starts with that first piece of food you put in your mouth. And so bitters are good for that, but these herbs are so far beyond that, okay? The framework of bitter was what put me on the trail of these herbs. We talk about herbs that can help with stress and anxiety, sleep, pain, so many things. Some of these have antibacterial properties, antibiotic properties, antiviral properties. Some of them help heal wounds. Some of them help with all kinds of, menstrual issues. There are so many things these herbs do. And that's why I spent, 12, 20 pages sometimes on one herb. I go through usually around 3,000 years of history on each herb, tracing it as back as I can go, as far back as I can go. I mean, going to like the Ebers Papyrus from ancient Egypt, up through the Greeks, and the Romans, and I mean Dioscorides and Hippocrates and Pliny and Galen and all those guys, Theophrastus. I trace its use through the Middle Ages, monastic medicine. I find out what the Benedictines were using these herbs for, what St. Hildegard wrote about them, what Walfrid Strawbro wrote about them, all the way up through, we're getting into like Elizabethan England. I'm looking at, how are they used by Parkinson and Gerard and Culpeper. Remember our show from last week? I told you about the great herbalists of the Elizabethan period of England. We're looking into that. Then I'm starting to get into more modern use. I'm looking at how they were used. Well, and in German folk medicine, I go deep into German folk medicine. Father Nate, Brother Aloysius, Father Kunzel. Uh, I get deep into the tradition of the Ashkenazi Jews. I see how it was used in the Polish tradition, which was very influenced by the Ashkenazi Jews and German folk medicine. I see how was this herb used in Russia over a few hundred years, right? And then I'm getting into the colonies. I'm looking at America and France. Don't forget France. I get into the herbs use where I can find the medicine of France as well. We're kind of moving from the Middle East into through the history of use through Greece and Rome, up into Central Europe, throughout Western Europe, and then how is the herb used in early America? How was it used through the colonial era into the modern day? I literally trace the history of every one of these herbs for about 3,000 years and more in some cases, at least 2,000 years for all of them, except for the New World herbs. Some of these are New World herbs. I spent a lot of time delving into Native American herbal medicine, South American herbal medicine, Every single thing I can find written about these herbs that isn't duplicative. I mean, I'm not repeating the same thing over and over. Every unique use for these herbs from the very first time it was recorded to the modern day use by modern herbalists, citing the sources, going through the history, I give it to you. And the properties of the herb are just detailed. So, I mean, if you want to know about any of these 75 herbs, I'm going to tell you, my book is like a library. It will save you hundreds of hours of research because I did hundreds of hours of research on each of these herbs. It's massive. I mean, honestly, it's a massive work, but I don't want you to think it's intimidating. You know, when I talk to you just like this, I'm always telling stories and anecdotes and I'm always laughing. I mean, you know how it is. A lot of people have told me when they read my articles or my books, they can hear my voice through them. I have a lighthearted way. I'm a storyteller at heart. So when I'm telling you the history of these herbs, you can hear me speaking if you know my voice. It's fun. I do it in a lighthearted, colorful way. This is not going to bog you down with all kinds of dates and numbers and all that. No, I'm literally telling you the story of each one of these herbs. And I'm kind of proud of this one actually. This one turned out remarkably well. Let me just kind of go through the herbs that I list in this book, Encyclopedia of Bitter Medicinal Herbs by Judson Carroll. You can find it on Amazon in print. Now, first of all, I talk about a brief history of herbal medicinal bitters, thousands of years. I mean, the bitter herbs were the first herbs our ancestors used. Uh, they found these herbs to help not only with digestion. I mean, you got to remember, primitive man was eating a lot of raw meat, a lot of spoiled meat. They had a lot of digestive issues. At some point, they learned to cook, but still the meat had gotten a little spoiled, and they didn't have refrigeration. Things weren't going to keep a lot. They also had a lot of intestinal worms and parasites. They found these bitter herbs tens of thousands of years ago. I mean, there's evidence 60,000 years ago that our ancestors were using medicinal bitter herbs for to settle their stomach, to stop diarrhea, to kill worms in some instances. I mean, you think of wormwood. You know, wormwood is artemisia. It's one of the herbs I cover in this book. Wormwood is so-called wormwood because it kills worms. So it's pretty simple in that regard. It also has incredible other properties. So the entire Artemisia family is one of the most ancient used by man, and it has some of the most fascinating of all herbs in this family. Ditto with sages and mints. A lot of our herbs we take for granted. And I talk about a lot of these herbs that are just we consider culinary spices that have incredible properties. Thyme, for instance. Thyme is one of the best lung herbs possible. Thyme is expectorant. It has antiseptic and antibiotic properties. You know, thyme is not something you just throw in with your chicken and roast it. No, thyme is a phenomenal medicinal herb, and we've kind of forgotten about that. Some of the herbs that I mentioned, agrimony, andrographis, which is one of our more recently introduced herbs into Western herbalism. It comes from India. This is it's called the king of the bitters. Well, so is gentian, but this is one of two herbs called the king of the bitters. Andrographis is green charetta. It's a powerful antiviral. This is one of the herbs that you can grow. You can grow in your own garden that we really want to have on hand for things like COVID or the next outbreak of a swine flu or something. Andrographis is a powerful antiviral and an excellent digestive herb with many properties. One that you would totally take for granted would be aloe. You know, that plant you have in your window, right? You use it for burns. Whenever you get a burn, you burn yourself in the kitchen, you snap off a bit of an aloe leaf and rub that gel on there, right? That's what everybody knows aloe for. Maybe you've used it as a laxative. Some people use it in weight loss regimens. Aloe has incredible properties. It's also antiviral, and it's a bitter herb. The word aloe vera actually comes from an Islamic word meaning bitter, shiny substance. And you kind of wonder how often did they find bitter, shiny substances? They would need to come up with a whole word for it, the name aloe or however it was pronounced. I mean, to me, that's a little far out, but Aloe was an absolutely valued herb in the ancient world. You're talking a hot, dry place, a lot of sunburns, a lot of cracked lips and bleeding skin, a lot of intestinal and digestive issues, and aloe was like almost miraculous. Okay, this herb was carried throughout the Middle East into Greece and Rome. It was taken by the Ashkenazi Jews into Central Europe and up into Russia, even you know 500 years ago. You could go to a little cottage in Poland and someone would have an aloe plant growing in their window. An aloe plant native to the Middle East, native to the deserts and the Islamic countries. That's how just phenomenal the history of this plant, this simple succulent is. Angelica, one of my absolute favorite herbs. I use angelica for lung conditions. It's great for colds. It has a wonderful kind of licoricey celery flavor. It's a bitter herb. It shows up in the Swedish bitters. Anise, anise the spice. You'll be amazed everything anise can do. Artichoke, the food. Probably one of my two favorite vegetables. If I had to pick my favorite vegetables, well, okay, ruling out the alliums for a minute because I cannot live without my garlic and onions and shallots and leeks and all that. I love onions. But if I had to pick two other vegetables that are my favorites, could be artichoke and asparagus. Those are just flavors I go crazy about. Artichoke is a medicinal bitter. You will be amazed all the properties of these herbs. Bay laurel, a common spice. Bay laurel was considered a sacred herb in ancient Greece and Rome. It was that highly valued. Birch, the birch tree, birch is amazing. Birch has wonderful anti-inflammatory effects both internally and externally. It can be used for all kinds of conditions from reducing fevers because it contains salicin. It contains a wintergreen type oil that's good for sore joints and muscles. It's great for your skin. Um, the old doctrine of signatures that plant will kind of indicate its use. It has a signature by God, the creator, of how it should be used by man. Well, think of a birch tree, the way the bark peels off like skin. Birch is one of our best skin herbs. Burdock. Burdock is a wonderful, mild bitter. It's a great food. The leaves can be poulticed on wounds. Burdock's wonderful. Calamus, as I mentioned before, is one of my all-time favorite herbs. Calamus is a bitter with a peppery flavor. I like to chew on it myself. It is antispasmodic. It will stop diarrhea. It will settle an upset stomach. It has very interesting properties that enhance concentration and cognitive ability. If you were like, I don't know, if you were a grad student or something, you were sitting through a long lecture, or you were, a medical student or something, and you were doing your internship, and you had to be sharp and you had to focus for hours and hours and hours at a time, eating, just chewing on a little bit of calamus root just a little at a time will give you that clarity and increase your endurance. It's wonderful for long drives, but it's really kind of an interesting one because if you were to eat a lot of calamus root, it becomes hallucinogenic. And not a very pleasant one either, from what I've read. I have never had hallucinations because of calamus. Apparently, you have to eat an entire root from a fresh plant. This is sweet flag. It kind of looks like cattails, but people who have say it's all of a sudden like demons are coming out of the walls at them and things are screaming in their ears. So I do not recommend that, to say the least. But calamus is a wonderful, useful herb that is one of our most intense bitters, and actually can be used culinarily because it has a nice peppery taste to it. It's very nice. Cardamom, another spice that's in the Swedish bitters with a long history of use. It was considered medicinal long before it was a spice. Likewise, cinnamon. Cinnamon is a great astringent. It helps with diarrhea. It helps with sore throats. It helps with all kinds of stuff. It can be, well, anyway, cinnamon is just a great herb that has a longer medicinal use in history than it does use in candies and, cookies and such as that. Carline thistle. I talk about the whole thistle family. We talk about Carline thistle. We talk about milk thistle. These are great herbs with just fascinating history. Especially in monastic medicine, what Saint Hildegard wrote about them, what Pliny the Elder and Dioscorides wrote about. The common thistles we look at as weeds. You'll be amazed. Uh, the herb I have trouble pronouncing, You know this one if you've listened to the show before. Centauri. Centauri. I always want to say century, but it's Centauri. It's really good astringent, medicinal, bitter herb. It's got a lot of uses. Chamomile, one we always take for granted. If you've only experienced chamomile in a tea you bought in the grocery store, you have not experienced chamomile. Chamomile is a bitter herb with antispasmodic and sedative properties that, when fresh, smells like green apples. Just an intense flavor of apples, and it's just absolutely wonderful. Grow some chamomile in your garden just to make sure you get to experience that scent. You will love it. Now, chicory is a fascinating herb in its own right. Chicory is, it looks like a little purple or blue dandelion. It's usually bluish. A blue dandelion, a little scruffy plant, a little weed. Nobody thinks about it. Its history of use as a medicinal bitter and for other medicinal properties goes back thousands of years. It was one widely written about by the ancient Greeks. You may think of it as that little weed. Eventually became what we know as the endive or endive, Belgian endive. I mean, it's just a very delicate, mildly bitter, wonderful salad herb, right? Well, the root you may also know as an addition to Creole style coffee, the coffee specifically that's brewed in New Orleans. Talk about the whole history of how this root came into that specific type of coffee. And if you've ever tried it before and you're like, oh my gosh, this is horribly bitter coffee, it's just awful, you haven't had it done the right way. When Creole coffee is roasted and blended the right way, there are very few companies do that. My favorite is Community Coffee. I love Community Coffee. Now, it then has to be prepared the right way. There is a specific brewing technique for Creole coffee. There is a specific blending with milk or cream, sugar's optional, and a little bit of brandy or bourbon that will bring out the flavor of that chicory, and it will be the very best cup of coffee you can imagine. And it's not real boozy. You're not putting a lot of alcohol in there. It's just enough to bring out this subtle chocolate type sweetness that's literally just a layer of flavor kind of hiding in the background. It's absolutely wonderful. And I provide the full instructions. You're going to enjoy that one. I sourced that from the Picayune Times Creole Cookbook from 1900. You will be amazed the care that, some of my ancestry has some Creole connections. My family came from the Creole Islands in the colonial times. And so I can say with pride, my ancestors took such care with coffee that it is an elevated beverage. I'm not going to buy a $10 or $15 cup of coffee from Starbucks or some other trendy coffee house. Ever have a real cup of Creole coffee, you would think, yeah, this might be worth 10 or 15 bucks. It's literally that good. But if all you've ever had is just stale, like maybe some old Louisiana, just brewed the regular way someone would make coffee with chicory, you are right to say it's disgusting. Don't drink it. But the good stuff, and I mean, I'm told, I'm not trying to put down Louisiana. They're actually a company that does a lot of good charitable work and are very involved in the community. What I'm saying is most people's experience with it is a stale version, and that is not brewed correctly. If you have it the right way, it is life altering. It is good stuff. All right, cinchona. Cinchona is the original source of quinine. I get into the fascinating history of cinchona and its use. And there are several quinine substitutes that we can look at as antivirals. Really, the first cocktails in the world, you could say, were gin and tonic with quinine in the tonic water, cinchona in the tonic water, or some of the cocktails that started being created in New Orleans using like Angostura bitters and other bitters that were based on Angostura bark or cinchona bark or other quinine type bitters. So really interesting history there. That was a fun one. Club moss is just a really interesting herb, very controversial in herbalism, easily confused with other herbs. It has wonderful properties. Coriander, it's another one of those spices that really has more medicinal use than it has culinary use. Cramp bark is viburnum. Now, this is one of our bitter herbs that goes under so many names. I mean, it can be high bush cranberry, it can be black haw, it can be mayhaw. There's probably 40 some varieties of viburnum, most, if not all of which have medicinal properties that are fantastic. This is an antispasmodic. This is one that if you have muscle pains, muscle spasms, tight muscles, if you're a woman of childbearing years, if you have menstrual cramps, you should have some viburnum on hand because this is one of the two or three very best herbs for stopping the cramps. If you have bad feet and calf cramps, viburnum. It was even used historically to help prevent miscarriage because it was such a strong antispasmodic. Wonderful history, really interesting herb. I get a lot into these herbs with the early American um, pharmacopoeias, the pharmacy manuals, the medical dispensatories written in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and you're going to find this is a fascinating herb. I give a couple of bitters formulas in here. I give my daily digestive bitters formula. We talk about dandelion, you know, the hated weed, one of the healthiest things. It is not only one of the very, very healthiest foods you can eat, but it's an excellent herb. It has antiviral properties. It's good for the digestion. It's good for your skin. It's good for your lungs. It's good for everything. Get into docks. Yeah, docks are another one of those common weeds that are a fascinating herb. Really, the use of docks through the Middle Ages and into the Elizabethan time, really surprising. Really fun to read about. A lot of Irish history in that. You're going to enjoy that one. Elecampane, classic European lung herb, one of the best bitter herbs, lots of properties. Feverfew is another one of our bitter herbs that has antiviral properties, also helps with fevers and such. Um, gentian is, I'm going to say gentian is my favorite bitter herb. I love gentian. It is strongly bitter, but I like the flavor. The flowers are just absolutely beautiful. It will do everything from help digestion to bring down a fever to you name it. Gentian is one of those great herbs. And it's one that's a little endangered in its native areas when you start growing it in the garden. Ginkgo. Ginkgo biloba is the oldest plant on earth, the oldest tree. There's one species of ginkgo. It's a remnant from millions of years ago. Okay? Ginkgo is ginkgo was one that was here with the dinosaurs and before the dinosaurs. When you see just that beautiful golden ginkgo biloba tree, look at that and realize that's the oldest species of plant you're going to see on Earth. I mean, mushrooms, asparagus even. Asparagus is one of the oldest. The ferns are one of the oldest. Ginkgo is as old or older than any of them. It's a phenomenal tree. Well, okay, it can't be older than mushrooms, but as far as a tree, it's the oldest one there is. And it is a great bitter. It has all kinds of really interesting properties. It increases circulation. It's great for the memory. It has some good protective properties for the reproductive system of both male and female. Wonderful, interesting plant. Just really, if you get into plants, if you're a plant geek like I am, you're going to love reading about ginkgo. Common goldenrod that everybody blames for their allergies that are actually caused by ragweed. Goldenrod is an excellent medicinal herb. Nice, bitter, wonderful properties. Golden seal. Golden seal is one of the herbs that opened America. Okay, when our ancestors came here, most of them were fur traders. There were some farmers. Farming was really pretty tough in early times. A lot of starvation. Fur traders opened this country. They took fur and they traded it to like the Dutch East India Company and various companies that were big fur traders. Very quickly, they learned from the Native Americans they were trading furs with about our herbs, about our native herbs. Sassafras, for instance, was one of our first great exports. Golden seal was huge. Golden seal made people fortunes like you would not believe, to the point that it was overharvested. That's another one you want to grow in your garden. Try not to take it from the wild. Try not to buy it picked from the wild. Hops, which we put in beer, hops are a wonderful bitter. Hops were introduced into herbal tradition and into Zymurgy, which is brewing beer, by St. Hildegard von Bingen. She was the first one to ever say Hops are a good bitter and preservative for beer. We owe our our wonderful beers to a German saint born in the mid 1000s who wrote her book around 1100 AD. So next time you have a beer, give a toast to Saint Hildegard von Bingen. Hyssop is such a great herb that is really rarely used these days. It's a great bitter. It's good for the liver. It's good for the lungs. Jamaican dogwood is an interesting New World herb. It was used by natives as a fish poison. You take a little bit, throw it in the water, and the fish float to the surface, and you scoop them up. Well, we can't do that legally anymore, but for about 50% of the population, Jamaican dogwood is as powerful a painkiller and sedative as opiates. Any herb like that. Now, for the other 50%, it doesn't do a lot, but for that 50%, imagine this horrible situation we have with opiates these days. All these people that are addicted to opiate prescription painkillers, if they could be weaned off of those and turned onto a helpful herb that really doesn't have a lot of bad side effects, it's not addictive that we know of. I mean, you always have to put that caveat. It has not been thoroughly tested by the pharmaceutical industry because they have no incentive. They'd much rather millions of people get addicted to their painkillers and die than for them to have a natural herb they can use. I'll just leave that there and move on to lady's mantle, which is a wonderful herb. Obviously, it's called lady's mantle because it's named after Our Lady or the Mother of God. It was thought that highly of in the Middle Ages in monastic medicine that it was an herb dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Lavender, which is, you know, I grew up in a college town, a lot of hippie girls. Lavender I associate with, willowy girls with hairy armpits. I have my issues with lavender. I'm actually a little bit allergic to it, but it's a antiseptic. It's got some excellent medicinal properties. It's also a nice culinary herb included in the herbs de Provence. It's sedative. It's a wonderful herb, and I'm learning to love lavender, is the way I put it. Lemon balm is such a great tea herb. It has both stimulative effects. It's another one of those in the mint family that, if it's done the right way, can literally just knock you down. It is that strong an herb, and most people don't think of it as being more than just a little mild tea herb. Lemon verbena also has that lemon scent, and I like to combine the lemon balm and the lemon verbena. Wonderful culinarily speaking. And that one I give a nice little recipe for bluefish grilled with lemon verbena and onions. Oh, it's good. Right, licorice. Licorice is actually the sweetest non-sugar herb next to stevia. But to a large swath of the population, their taste buds read licorice as bitter. I may eat licorice and think it's sweet, and I may hand the same root to you, and you eat it and think it's bitter. It's just a little trick our mind plays on us. Licorice is a powerful antiviral. It can't be used long term or in large amounts, but it actually enhances the antiviral effects of other herbs. Licorice strengthens the kidneys like nothing else. Anything that strengthens the kidneys strengthens the lungs and the small intestines. If you have kidney deficiency, as they call it, look into licorice. Like if when the weather changes and cold front moves in and it gets cloudy like it did yesterday, if you start feeling like cold and feverish, you may have a kidney deficiency. If going up elevation affects you very strongly, if change in elevation, another sign of kidney deficiency. If when you stand up, you kind of black out a little bit, well, again, your kidneys are weak. They're not keeping that balance the way they're supposed to. And, well, look into licorice. It can be a lifesaver, really. Now, in some people, licorice can raise blood pressure. I talked about that entire issue in the book and which types of people should avoid licorice. Also, very important, never to use it in large doses for long periods of time. It can have very serious side effects. But licorice is I also makes, my favorite candy. I love the actual real salty, original Nordic licorice. Not sweet at all. Actually, it's absolutely delicious in my opinion. Mallows. Mallows are also a mildly bitter herb, and they're so useful. I mean, mallows are soothing to anything internally, externally. They can help prevent shock. Mallows are fantastic. I get into medicinal mushrooms such as reishi, turkey tail, you know, the various chaga, this one I discussed. These are all bitter, very good adaptogen, very immune system supporting herbs, anti-cancer properties, the whole bit. Milk thistle is liver protective. Milk thistle is one of the few herbs that has been scientifically shown to protect the liver and to heal liver tissue. Very important to know because, whether you drink or not, we are absolutely surrounded every day. We're coming into contact with solvents, even in the soap we wash our hands with. We are coming into contact with solvents, and these all take a toll on the liver. And it's very important to know about milk thistle. And, the leading cause of liver disease in most countries isn't alcohol at all, it's Tylenol. And if you go to the doctor for anything, he's going to say, take Tylenol. I don't know why, but look, if you've been taking Tylenol, I'd say stop. But if you've been taking Tylenol, you definitely need to get interested and investigate into milk thistle because we can't live without our livers. Mints, I talk about the whole family of mints, and mints are phenomenal. Monarda, which is closely related to mint. It's bee balm. It has its own unique properties. It's very very good for the lungs, especially. I mentioned motherwort before. That's also in the mint family. It's great for stress and emotional issues. What people always say is it feels like you've been hugged by your mother if you take a motherwort tea or a little tincture. It's soothing. This is one of those gifts from God that people are overlooking. Mistletoe, really interesting subject. This is about European mistletoe. Very important, very important. Never use American mistletoe. European mistletoe is a nice bitter, a sedative, good for the liver, good for all kinds of stuff, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer properties. American mistletoe is toxic. It is poisonous. It actually does the opposite of what European mistletoe does. Whereas European mistletoe relaxes the muscles, slows the heart rate, American mistletoe causes muscle contractions and increased heart rate, and then you have a stroke and die. So remember that. Only use European mistletoe. There are some very specific medicinal uses for American mistletoe that an amateur herbalist has no business even thinking about trying. I'm just telling you, dangerous plant. Beautiful though, I love to collect it and use it as a Christmas decoration. And I talk about the whole tradition where kissing under the mistletoe comes from, which is, kind of interesting in its own right. Mugwort. Oh, this is one of the artemisias. It is one of my absolute favorite. Mugwort has this interesting ability. I mean, in addition to being antiviral and good for the liver and good for digestion, all kinds of stuff, mugwort somehow causes the mind not to focus on trauma. If you have an issue, something's happened in your life that was upsetting, someone died or you went through a bad time, mugwort taken regularly just kind of helps you move beyond it, helps you not focus on it. It's a wonderful herb. Nobody knows why or how it works, but it's been documented by cultures all over the earth for thousands of years. Mugwort burned as an incense gives you intense, some would say prophetic dreams, others say visionary type of dreams, others just say lucid dreams. You're like present and aware of what's going on in your dream and able to participate in it in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. So mugwort has really interesting psychological effects that we really don't understand. But again, it's one of those gifts from God. It can help people through really bad times and recover from really bad times. I mean, all those refugees coming out of Ukraine. I mean, first thing you want to do is give them food and shelter and water and all that. But yeah, I'd be giving them some mugwort tea, mugwort beer. It's called mugwort because it was because it used to be used as a bittering agent for beer in place of hops, uh, just to help them deal with the trauma. It would probably do a tremendous amount of good. Myrrh is a resin. Myrrh is a bitter. Myrrh is an antiseptic. Myrrh is one of the strongest flavors in the Swedish bitters. Again, we're talking a fascinating history going back to ancient Middle East when the skin was drying and cracking and getting infected. Myrrh was a lifesaver, and it's been used constantly for thousands of years. Oregon grape and barberry are excellent substitutes for golden seal. They contain the same berberine, the yellow pigment in the root. They do the exact same stuff. They're wonderful for disinfecting wounds, for killing bacterial and fungal infections. They're so good for the liver, and they're just really great, and they're so abundant. I mean, if you literally just pull up one bush, you're going to have enough roots for yourself and your family for years. And, these are planted in landscaping throughout the country. The birds eat the berries and drop them everywhere. The berries actually make a very nice wine or jelly or whatever. They're very bitter, though. I think Michael Moore said eating one raw was like a combination of a vitamin C tablet and soap. Kind of get what he was saying, but I kind of like them. I pick them in the woods, not the barberry, but the Oregon grape specifically. I find they quench the thirst and they're actually pretty good, but I like bitter things. But Oregon grape is one of like the go-to first aid plants. If you don't have one growing in your yard, you need one. And if you can't get one, just look around. Birds dropped one of those berries somewhere, and there's a little Oregon grape bush coming up. It has spiky leaves like a holly bush, and then it gets these grape-like berries on there. Pull the thing up, dig it up. I know Seven Song, who's he's a real hippie, he's a real environmentalist. He's like, I'm going to break all the rules here. I'm going to advise you get a chain, you hook it to your vehicle, not on the bumper, but hook it to something solid, wrap it around there, and just rip the whole bush out of the ground. He said you just go crazy trying to dig that whole thing up. And it's true. The root goes very deep. It's a very strong plant, and it's one of our strongest herbs. Parsley, an absolutely overlooked medicinal herb. It's also an overlooked culinary herb. I talk about both uses. Parsley is so good for the liver, for the heart. Parsley is just a wonderful herb. And it actually is a flavor enhancer. You can put parsley into almost any dish and it brings out the flavors. Those oils, the volatile oils from the parsley leaves, enhance the flavors of dishes. I really learned this when my grandmother was getting up in years and she had no appetite. If I put a little parsley into anything, she loved it. And it's because her sense of smell and her taste buds were getting weak. The parsley enhanced that flavor, and she was able to eat and put on weight, and it probably extended her life actually. So parsley's way too easily overlooked. Pine, I've talked before about the wonderful properties of pine. Antiviral, antiseptic, stops bleeding, you name it. Pine's a great one. Potentilla is an excellent astringent bitter herb. It's a real go-to for diarrhea. It helps with all kinds of stuff, swelling. Rhodiola is a really fascinating herbal bitter that has adaptogenic properties. It helps the body deal with stress. It's a wonderful plant. Good for the immune system, very immune supportive. Rhubarb is one that will absolutely surprise you. If all you know is rhubarb pie, which is delicious, I love rhubarb and strawberry combined. That's one of my all-time favorites. Rhubarb was once one of the most expensive things on earth. The British Empire at their height was the most wealthy nation around with the most constipation. If you know anything about the English diet, they are proud of their stodgy food. And I mean, I love Yorkshire pudding. I love uh, bubble and squeak. And I mean, pasties. And I mean, I'm a big fan of British food, honestly. I mean, it's not as bad as everybody says. It's really, really good when it's done right. But there's not a lot of fiber. I mean, they boil their vegetables down to like nothing, right? Mushy peas. They don't eat fresh peas, they eat mushy peas with their fish and chips. They had serious constipation issues. Rhubarb was at that point in time a medicinal herb coming out of China. It was worth more than gold. It wasn't until thinking somewhere in the 1500s when they were able to figure out how to grow rhubarb in England, and it was a game changer. Rhubarb being a powerful laxative was how it was used. Only later did it become food. It really wasn't even a popular food until the early American colonies when they realized, yeah, this is one of the first plants that comes up in the spring, and people were getting scurvy because they didn't have fruit or anything to eat through the winter. And in New England, they started making rhubarb pies. So, really interesting herb. Senna and safflower, kind of in the same category. The English needed their laxatives. That's what it comes down to. English were laxative obsessed, and they sourced them from all over the world instead of just eating raw vegetables in their backyard, which is a little odd. I mean, they could have just eaten, raw spinach, dock, lettuces, all the stuff that was growing, sorrels abundantly around them, but for some reason they just cooked the life out of. Rosemary. Rosemary has rosmarinic acid. It's antiseptic, antiviral, antibacterial, wonderful antibiotic. It has all kinds of great properties. I already mentioned safflower, sage. The sage is just, the old saying in ancient Greek herbalism. A lot of people say Hippocrates said it. I don't know. Why should a man die if he has sage growing in his garden? They literally thought sage was an herb so powerful it could prevent you from all illness and extend your life. We take sages far too for granted. And I include some really great, by the way, British recipes in there from Miss Grief using sage. Sage and onion are a very popular combination in British cooking. Sarsaparilla. Uh, Boy, is that an interesting subject. Sarsaparilla is an adaptogen. I mean, the soft drink that people call sarsaparilla or root beer has no sarsaparilla in it. It once did, and cowboys walking into a saloon would want a glass of sarsaparilla because it was after being worn out on the trail, they were getting their strength up to go see the hookers upstairs. I'll just put it that way. Uh, Sarsaparilla has this uh, reputation as being a very manly drink that increases testosterone. It may actually do that, but true sarsaparilla is a briar that grows in South America. We have all kinds of briars that grow in North America that share those same properties. And sarsaparilla may also be the Aurelia family, which are little spiky bushes, which include spikenard and are also adaptogens. These are all almost interchangeable, and the history of those is confusing because you got to sort out who was referencing what plant when. Other plants may have the same. I try to sort through all that, and I go through a lot of plants. And it really comes down to, yes, you can go into your backyard and you can pick some smilax, greenbrier, briar, bullbriar, carrion flower, the common things you fight with, the thorny vines that grow into your bushes that you're trying to kill. The roots are actually an adaptogen comparable to ginseng, which is one of the most expensive herbs on earth. The price of my book is nothing compared to the learning about the treasure of adaptogens growing in your backyard. And if you need a little pep in your step, as they might say. I already mentioned senna, skullcap, like viburnum, is a very powerful antispasmodic, excellent herb for pain and sleep and relaxation. Speedwell has a really interesting history. It was one of the Romans' most popular, famous remedies. Sweet woodruff it's in the Gallium family, grows just about everywhere. You can find some. It can actually be a substitute for vanilla flavoring, in addition to all its incredible medicinal properties. I've already mentioned Tilia or basswood tree, lime tree, they call it in Europe. Wonderful bitter with sedative properties. Turmeric is a spice that's actually included in the Swedish bitters and has been for hundreds of years. That would have been one of the most expensive spices in the world at the time. Now we know it to be anti-inflammatory and antiviral and anti-cancer properties. Valerian, a nice bitter herb that is the most powerful, simple sedative we have. Valerian will put you to sleep. It will knock you out for about 80% of the population. 20% of the population, it may actually be a stimulant or give you nightmares. So I discuss all that in the book so you know how to use valerian. Vervain, excellent herb. Violets. So, everybody overlooks violets, right? Violets are just little blue flowers. Violets have salicin like aspirin. They're an excellent bitter. They help the liver. They can help clear the eyesight and prevent cataracts. Violets are phenomenal. It's a whole family of herbs with just wonderful properties. My favorite, aside from just the common little violets that grow around the woods around here, are the Johnny Jump Ups. Some people call them pansies. So pansies actually a different flower. Read about violets. You will never look at violet the same way again. It is a very powerful, unassuming little herb, which is high in vitamin C and other vitamins. It's a food. It can be candied. You can take little candied violet flowers and put them on a cake, or you can take a tea of it. You can just eat the whole thing in a salad. Wonderful herbs. Grow them, find them, forage for them. And if you want to read like 17 pages on the properties of violets and their history, you'll find that in my book, and I'm not kidding. Violets are phenomenal. Vitex, which is a popular landscaping bush called monk's pepper. The little fruits Vitex have a peppery taste. They were once used as a substitute for pepper. They also have estrogenic properties, so monks would eat the Vitex to lower any sexual desire. Well, most people don't want that these days. They want just the opposite. But many women would find the estrogenic effects of Vitex very useful. So Vitex is a very interesting plant, also a very pretty plant, one to know about. Walnut has so many uses. Walnut is especially good for its ability to kill parasites and worms. But it's a great bitter and it's good anti-inflammatory. It's good for the skin. Walnut's an excellent tree to know about its herbal properties. And it's the entire Juglands family. That's walnut, that's pecan or pecan, however you want to say it. That's hickory nut, butternut, all those. Wild quinine. This is a herb. This is a weed for most people that has the same properties as boneset and feverfew and quinine. This is one you can find growing side of the road. You can grow it in your garden. That could be very useful the next time a pandemic comes around. And it's just a quick growing, throw the seeds out there and you've got all you need within a month or two. So definitely you want to read about that one. Wintergreen, another one of early America's biggest exports. Wintergreen is excellent for aching joints and sore muscles, and it's good for bringing down fevers. And it's a nice little wild edible berry to find in the wintertime. It was a very popular flavoring in gums and candies and mouthwashes and toothpaste. And, wintergreen, yeah, you can also grow that one in your garden. And it's a great plant to know about. Wonderful for colds and flus and aches and pains and all kinds of stuff. Wormwood, we've already mentioned. Wormwood is the classic. Wormwood is the king of the Artemisia family. It has antiviral properties. It's good for the liver. In large amounts, it can cause hallucinations and stupor and all kinds of stuff. It has an absolutely fascinating history. It is the main ingredient in most of our older flavored wines, such as vermouth. Vermouth is actually an old German word for wormwood. So literally, vermouth is wormwood wine. Hippocrates was said to have put down a recipe for wormwood wine. I haven't been able to find it, but Dioscorides gave us several recipes for wormwood wine. Wormwood is, in my opinion, absolutely essential herb, especially in the era of COVID when we need strong antivirals. It also can be a little dangerous. It is the main ingredient in absinthe. Absinthe is supposedly what caused those artists to hallucinate and draw all those, crazy paintings. Turns out the absinthe itself was like super high in alcohol. It probably didn't have anything to do with the wormwood at all. But wormwood essential oil taken internally will kill you in a most unpleasant way. So never try to make your own absinthe out of wormwood essential oil. I just need to say that. If you want to experiment with wormwood itself, do so carefully after reading about it, preferably in my book, but never, ever, ever take the essential oil internally in any way, shape, or form. Yarrow is a classic herb. It was the soldier's herb, along with bugle, which I also discuss in the book. That's the juga repens. Soldiers used to carry yarrow and bugle to stop bleeding, to heal wounds, and yarrow is fantastic. Yarrow has a lot of properties. It can help fevers, it can help stop bleeding, or it can help bring on menses, used in two different ways. Yarrow is one of our best herbs, and it grows amazingly. I mean, yarrow is so in my front yard, I have tons of yarrow. Okay, and I just hated to mow it. I thought, oh, I'm going to kill all my yarrow, so I went and harvested a bunch. There was still tons more, and I needed to cut the grass. I hate cutting the grass. I hate losing my valuable plants. This time, I needed to cut the grass, and I thought, I'm going to kill all my yarrow. Right? I go out there, I mow the lawn. I come back a few days later. Yarrow is now growing 3 inches tall and sideways across the ground. Yarrow is so adaptable that it no longer was growing upright where it was going to be cut down by a mower blade. Somehow, this plant that doesn't have a brain figured out to turn sideways and grow horizontally across the ground. Now, that is a tough herb and one that obviously, by the doctor's signatures, is going to be useful to us. And I skipped some of those. I mean, I don't think I went through all 75 by any means. So That's all I'm going to say about the book. I think it is phenomenal. Again, it's the Encyclopedia of Bitter Herbs. I'm very proud of this book. Obviously, it's a huge amount of work, 500 pages. It belongs on your shelf if you have any interest in herbs. That's all I'm going to say. I hope other people will write glowing reviews so I no longer have to speak so effusively about my own work. Last week, I went through Early American Herbalists from my other most recent book, the Christian Herbal Medicine History and Practice. I forgot about Jethro Kloss. Jethro Kloss is the most pivotal figure between, say, 1920 and 1950. Really, about more the 40s, 30s was his time. When herbal medicine was essentially outlawed in America, he brought it back to a point. I mean, he did not legalize it, but he brought back its popularity among some populations, and he kind of changed the course of herbal medicine. Jethro Kloss was a Seven-Day Adventist. That put him outside of mainstream America, especially in the 1940s. I mean, look, 1940s, every store in America was closed on Sunday. That was the day for going to church. That's when Catholics go to church. That's when Episcopalians go to church. That's when Presbyterians go to church. That's when Methodists go to church. That's when Baptists go to church. That's when Lutherans go to church. Every mainstream uh, Catholic or Protestant denomination goes to church on Sunday because that's the day that Jesus rose from the dead. That's why we celebrate Easter on a Sunday. That's the day of the resurrection. And it says in the Bible that Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. You can get a book called the Didache, written by the followers of the original apostles before the Bible was even completed. It's the Revelation of John was written. That states the earliest Christians went to church on Sunday. That was actually how they differentiated themselves from religious Jews who honored the original Sabbath. The new Sabbath was the day the Lord rose. Seven-Day Adventists, especially in the 1920s, 30s, were so far out of the mainstream America because they wanted to honor the original Sabbath, not the day Jesus rose. They actually, at that point, were very adamant, saying that anyone who went to church on Sunday was worshiping the devil and was going to go to hell. I mean, so, they did not have a lot of commonality with the majority of American mainstream culture. Where I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, there are a ton of Seven-Day Adventists. I get along with them great. Yeah, they're going to tell me I'm going to hell because I go to church on Sunday. They also think the Pope is like the beast out of the book of Revelation or something. I mean, it's kind of crazy stuff, but great people, and I get along with them very well, and they're very nice. They came to the mountains of North Carolina because they needed to separate themselves. They tend to form, especially in the 1940s, and I know now they're a little more mainstream. I mean, you can go to any town, there's going to be a small Seven-Day Adventist church, no big deal. But you have to understand, at the time of Jethro Kloss's writings, you would find them in little pockets in the Appalachians, in the Midwest, not in major cities. These were not going to be professional, educated people. Um, they would be more on the lower economic scale. They just weren't part of mainstream culture. That's all there is to it. Okay, I'm not trying to say that as a criticism. I'm trying to tell you the situation was essentially these were religious separatists. So Jethro Kloss, a pretty interesting man in his own right, wrote this huge book called Back to Eden. And in it, he includes herbal medicine. This was a time when a lot of health fads were going on. A lot of, starting in like the 17, 1800s, you had these mineral springs where people would set up spas. The water was bad in cities. People would go to these spas and they would follow pretty strict diets and they would bathe in the mineral waters and they drink the mineral waters. They go home healthy. Well, by about 1900, 1920, you had like the guy that came up with graham crackers. Okay, why the guy that came up with graham crackers? He thought that was the only food people should eat. Graham cracker was health food. Okay, the guy that came up with Salisbury steak believed you should eat 3 meals of Salisbury steak a day, every day, nothing else, and that was the key to health. That Salisbury steak was actually popularized because he advised the dietary um, aspect of the Union Army in the Civil War. This was serious mainstream thought back then that exclusionary diets were the key to health. So Jethro Kloss comes along in this period of time. So you need to know these two things. One, outside of mainstream culture, very, very strict religious beliefs. Two, he preached an exclusionary diet. He encouraged vegetarianism. Not only vegetarianism, but no alcohol. That was also very popular at the time, especially among Protestants on the lower economic end of the spectrum, the Pentecostals and Southern Baptists and Church of God and all that. Again, not a criticism, I'm just saying these were the people really pushing prohibition and the temperance movement. So it's a cultural thing. And Jethro Kloss was very much a part of this. So he said, don't eat meat, don't drink alcohol. I don't think he allowed much sugar, if any, but no spice. He thought diets that included pepper, red pepper, mustard, cinnamon, any spices were detrimental to you. So very bland diets, no fun whatsoever. But he also brought back into this section of the population the Thomsonian and eclectic herbal medicine tradition. He was sort of an aggregator of various schools of health thought in the early 1900s, bringing back Thomsonian medicine, bringing back the eclectic medicine, and he actually included Father Nape's water cure. So he was ecumenical to that extent. I suppose he would have said Father Nape was going to hell because he went to church on Sunday and was a Catholic, but he said that Father Nape's water cure and Father Nape's herbs were really essential for health. So, in a time when herbalism was totally removed from the mainstream of society, he gave to people outside of the mainstream of society herbal medicine, and he really encouraged it. And that's probably a big reason why in areas like the Appalachian Mountains where I live, like the Ozarks, like various places where you find people outside of mainstream society, herbal medicine continued. He also encouraged organic gardening. The Back to Eden thing begins with a man named Jethro Kloss, a very strict, austere Seventh-day Adventist in the early 1900s. His book would be embraced in the 1960s by all the hippies in the Back to the Land movement of the 70s, who would absolutely, reject his religious beliefs, but would want to be vegetarians, living in harmony with nature. So big, really big cultural influence, actually. You can still buy Jethro Kloss's books today. His book, the Back to Eden book, I have it on my shelf. It's a good herbal. It's a good representation of herbal medicine and thought about health and life in, say, between 1920 and 1950, more like 1930 and 40s. It's not an authoritative manual. It's an aggregation of various schools of natural health at that time. So I did think it was important that I bring that up. All right, y'all have a wonderful week. We'll talk to you next week for sure, but I think I may actually have a midweek update. You may see a very short version of the podcast published about midweek because there's a very big event coming up about a week from now I want to let you know about. Y'all have a good one, and I'll talk to you next time. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.